Oh, hold on. Cord. And then share my screen. Okay, can everybody see the screen? Shakira, I see you twice. And you're muted.
I was having technical difficulties over here this morning. I tried to do it through my phone, and now I'm on my laptop. I don't know why my phone one still popped up. I'm logged out over here.
That's funny. That's funny. That's funny. So you don't even have your phone logged in right now. That's fine. It's okay.
Like there's no app on my phone right now.
I don't know. Hey, Gerald.
Hello.
We are at the mercy of technology right now, and you know what? That's okay. We're just all adapting to it. Positivity everywhere. All right. So today's session of Ignite, we've started our second week. So they broke Ignite into weeks. And formerly, I told you guys it was like 3 or 4 hours a day for 12 sessions. And now it's 1 hour sessions, and they've broken it up to 4 weeks. So Spark is 2 weeks and Elementals are 2 weeks. Spark is kind of the very beginning basics. Elementals is more application of the skills, of the fundamentals. So today we're going to talk about your value proposition. And as we've said, every day successful agents do these things. They grow their business and they run their business. With no secret, success leaves clues. And like, before we started recording, Tiffany and I were talking a little bit about the Shift Facebook group and how in that group and in those conversations are extremely well successful mega agents that are on these calls. And it's interesting because you'll see a theme in what they're talking about and what we're talking about. It's very same. Lead generate, focus on your business, sharpen your skills, make sure that you know your big why. That is the core to everyone, whether you're just getting started or you're extremely successful, $100 million producer. It's the same principles. So there's not that far from you and a mega agent. So today, we're going to talk about the value proposition. When I say value proposition, what do you guys think about? This is kind of the slide gives you the answer here, but what do you think about when I say value proposition?
What you're giving to your client?
Yeah. It's in a way your value and your customer service proposition. What are you offering of value, and why should they choose you to do business with them? So we're going to take this time to define your value, figure out your 3 aspects of service, be able to know and state your value, and then deliver that value. So we're going to define what that value proposition is and dig down deeper to figure out your unique qualities and how you can define it, right? So a value proposition is a simple and precise description of the benefits the customer will get from working with you. You should be able to clearly convey all the things you do to earn your fee or your commission, and your value proposition is a covenant between you and the customer. How will having a prepared value proposition help you move from leads to contracts to closings?
Was that a question?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Can
you repeat?
What will the value proposition do for you?
You'll gain an understanding. They'll gain an understanding of who you are,
Mhm.
you know, the company, what you represent, what the company represent, and what that means to them
Right.
as a valued customer.
That's right. That's exactly right. And it helps, like we said, set you apart from others, and it helps set the expectation, and you're conveying your standard of excellence, right?
Mhm.
And it makes you seem very professional and put together
Right.
when you're able to convey that to somebody. Um, so the 3 aspects of service, that's what we're going to talk about now. So when Gary Keller was researching the Millionaire Real Estate Agent, he noted that every top producing agent he spoke with had a deep and almost inherent sense of service. You cannot grow a real estate business if you don't prioritize your client's experience above all else. A stellar experience is how you earn your commission and you get referrals. We've identified 3 aspects of service: know the underlying purpose of real estate, a compelling value proposition, and fiduciary. Together, these aspects guarantee your clients will have the best possible real estate experience. So purpose, you're going to know the underlying purpose of the real estate professional. You're going to have a value proposition and communicate a clear sense of how you deliver on that purpose. And then your fiduciary is to exhibit a continual drive to put your client's needs above all else. And that's our, you know, when you're in real estate school, they talk a lot about the fiduciary, right? Well, when you're outside and you have your license, that sets us above, and it is extreme value to the client. When we have these discussions about tech companies buying real estate companies, or real estate companies not having true agency agreements with people, that missing link that the consumer, that the customer doesn't get, is that fiduciary responsibility. So you want to be clear that you provide that to your client, and that you provide them with the utmost care and put their needs above everything. That's why the agency agreements are so important. A lot of people, you'll hear if you take BOLD or different classes working with buyers and sellers, that there's a hesitancy and sometimes an objection to sign an agency agreement. But if you think about it like this, you don't go get service from your doctor without signing on with them, do you? You don't get attention from a lawyer without signing. There are many professions that's part of receiving the value, and the relationship is that agreement and contract between the professional and the consumer. So that's exactly what an agency agreement is. And it's your contract with them saying that you're going to adhere to holding their needs above your own. And so that's why it's an extreme value. I think some people treat it flippantly, you know what I'm saying? But there's really, if you put this as part of your value proposition, that's going to set you apart from somebody that maybe doesn't. So don't shy away from that. That sets you as a professional. So what is the underlying purpose of real estate? Tell me what you think. It's different for buyers and sellers. Don't overthink it. So what's the
Buying and selling.
Okay. So right, what does a buyer need?
A new house.
The buyer needs to purchase a home at the best price at the right time with the least amount of issues. What about for a seller?
To sell their home at top dollar,
Yeah.
quickest time possible,
Yeah.
and let the least issues, I guess, as possible.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So the buyer needs to buy a property at the best price at the right time with the least amount of problems. And then the seller needs to sell for the most amount of money, net the most amount of money, because the selling price and the net price are two different, right? So the net the most amount of money in the shortest amount of time with the least amount of problems. What happens to your client's buying or selling experience if you don't understand these two buying and selling purposes? What happens to their experience?
is not good at all for them, and they you and your company is horrible.
Yeah, they have a bad experience, have a bad taste in their mouth. You too will interact with clients or customers that have had a bad experience. And part of what you get to do is to, take that experience they had that was unpleasant and change it, right? When you provide your value. So Marisha said it's tarnished and they won't refer you and they'll feel differently about other agents. That's exactly right. That it tarnishes the, I guess, taste in their mouth that they have about real estate agents, real estate companies, and that's a lot of FSBOs you see out there is because they've had a bad experience with a realtor, right? As a realtor, what are some problems that you have anticipated for your clients that you've done to avoid them?
Did you repeat that again?
What are some problems you've anticipated for your clients and what have you done to avoid them? So we talked about when you just jumped on, the underlying purpose of real estate is to understand that buyers need to buy a home at the right time for the least amount of problems. Sellers need to net as much money as they can in the shortest amount of time with the least amount of problems. So when we're looking at that least amount of problems, what's something that typically happens, Rebecca, that you help and you're proactive with so it doesn't cause issues in selling or buying?
I know that when Sarah and I, either one of us, and it depends on the client and how we're dealing with them, because I sell some, but I mainly help her clients. But there's times when I interact with her clients, and so we try to, during a buyer consultation, and especially when we start looking at houses, or when they give us a list of houses that they're interested in, we try to, like one thing that's come up recently is septic issues.
Mm-hmm.
So we're like, okay, so some people have never dealt with a septic system, and we can't explain it completely, but we're like, we try to give the bare bones minimum of what you can expect with a septic system. That every so often you're going to have to pump it out. Every so often there can be problems. We try to do that when it's houses built in 1978 and before. There can be lead-based paint, and then if people really have never understood that, then we try to say, it's not really that big of a deal as long as you're not knocking it down, you're not sanding down or taking sheetrock down to the studs, or we try to. So it's going to depend on the client, but it's also going to depend on the house
Right.
and the area.
Right.
You can't. It's so you just kind of try to prepare them for anything, because the home inspector is going to say,
Yeah.
You need to have a septic system checked, and you're going to do this, and you're going to do that. So you just kind of have to be aware of all the different things in our market.
That's exactly right. And what I hear you saying, and what I was going to say is you're setting that expectation up front. So if we know that the buyers need to find the right property at the right time, because every buyer's timeline is different, right? And for the least amount of issues, we're looking at that least amount of issues. So the first thing, if you're looking at the buyer side, you're making sure they're pre-approved, tried and true, because that's going to, some people, we talked about agreements and not wanting to sign agreements and things like that. But the first step is to make sure someone's pre-approved, because if you skip that and you go show them homes, what's going to happen? There's going to be frustration. And that's your first problem. Okay. The second problem, and we talked about the fiduciary, is when you're signing that buyer agreement, you're signing this, so we'll have a loyal, responsible, professional relationship where I am servicing you and only you, and I'm loyal to the fiduciary responsibilities that brings that. that brings on that expectation, right? I'm here to take care of you. Okay. And then you're talking about looking at homes and things like that. That buyer consultation, you're setting clear expectations to make sure that you limit the frustration, right? You hear of people saying, oh, well, I showed somebody 15 homes, 20 homes. And I'm going to tell you, I have done that. And I have been frustrated every step of the way. I know the buyer was frustrated every step of the way. And you can limit that, though, by setting yourself up and setting the expectations by knowing what the underlying purpose is and making sure that you're covering your bases there. With the seller, having that conversation, every seller, and Rebecca, you can agree with me, thinks their home should sell for $1 million.
They're all special.
They're all special. They love them. Okay. So whether the market is saying, based on your comparative analysis, 100,000, 200,000, 300,000, they still have this mentality that their home is worth so much more than the market says. So if you go in and you just price that home at whatever they say, they're not the expert. They don't study the market like we do. And so what's that going to cause when you've looked at the market and a home is worth 200,000, but they list it at 300,000? Is that going to limit your problems and eliminate them, or is it going to cause problems? It's going to cause problems. Multiple problems. Okay. So that's why it's really important that we know it's the most important for a seller to net the most amount of money. And you can have the conversation with them the conversation is not how much do you think your home is worth, but how much money do you have in it and how much money do you need to net from it. Then we work out all of that. Then we compare and look what the market's doing. Because at that point, Rebecca, you'll agree, you get to it. And sometimes they can't afford to sell because it's not going to net what they need. But at that time, it's not important to get a listing and to list a house. It's important for the seller that you're working with to net the most money in the shortest amount of time. And so you as a professional having that heart-to-heart, that hard conversation of this is where the market's at. I want to help you get to that. Maybe now is not the right time. But are they still going to want to sell at some point? And are they still going to be able to come back to you? Are they going to respect you and refer you because of that? Mm-hmm. You built trust at that moment. And that's important. Okay. So we got to understand these underlying categories for buyers and sellers. And I know for me personally, when I got into real estate, I didn't think about it like that. I just thought I need to have listings. I need to have buyers. And that was business. Right. So there's a smart way to do it, and knowing that you need to do these steps correctly will set you up for future better business practices, right? All right, so value proposition, okay? Your value proposition distills your service offerings into a succinct set of benefits for your client. It states that you do for the client to earn your commission and helps explain the complexity of what you do. It also helps you hold you accountable to high standards. As we think about the definition, what do you see as the value of your value proposition? Why is it important enough to be included in the 3 aspects of service? Who has their value proposition and already has created that? So, a strong value proposition helps your clients understand your value and expertise. It protects your commission, and it builds strong, trusting relationships. We usually have a loose understanding of how we provide our clients value. It's easy to forget they may understand very little of what we do. Your value proposition is what you bring to the experience. It is a statement, and it phrases your skills, your expertise, your insights, and your language that makes it relevant to them. So, for example, let's say you're fluent in English and Spanish. You may be tempted to just say, I'm bilingual. But what you may say instead to convey the value of that is, I have access to a large pool of potential buyers for your home who are often overlooked by other agents. Right? That's not a simply, I'm bilingual, because that seems very, that limits you to English, Spanish, right? That's where your brain goes, right? You're thinking, oh, two. But when you think of it like you have access to a large pool of people who are often overlooked or not serviced at a high level, maybe in our area, that's where that opens the brain up to potential, right? It's just the phrasing of that. You can say the same thing. It's the phrasing of that. So in a few minutes, you're going to create your own value proposition statement. Before we do that, I want to talk about the final aspect of service. So we have functionary versus fiduciary, okay? What is the fiduciary and how is it different than functionary? Does anybody know?
I know that fiduciary means trust. So I guess I'm looking at it from a signed agreement versus a non-signed agreement, a client versus a customer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you totally can do that. So let's think about back in school and maybe middle school in English class. Fiduciary is both an adjective and a noun. It's an adjective. It refers to something dealing with trust, especially in relationships. You have a fiduciary duty to your clients to protect their best interest, doing what will likely be the largest and most frightening transaction of their life. As a noun, fiduciary means someone who has a fiduciary obligation. So you are your client's fiduciary. The fiduciary is one who completes tasks for the client, whereas the fiduciary completes tasks and goes beyond by placing your client's interests ahead of all others, even your own. So when you're having the conversation of market value versus wish list sales price, you're acting as a fiduciary, because if you did magically sell the home for $100,000 more than it was worth, would your commission be more? True. Yes. But what are the odds that that's going to happen with the least amount of problems? Not great. So having that conversation to set the expectations and the terms correctly, we're fiduciary, right? You're acting as a fiduciary by having that conversation. Being a fiduciary is a big deal. It is an honor. Not all industries get to say that. That's why it's important that we have a code of ethics and that we act upon that code of ethics, right? It's important, and it's more important today. And this is actually what it says in the thing, in the book. It's more important today, but they did not know COVID was going on when they wrote this. So it's even more important today that we're having these conversations. Hey, how are you? How can I help you? And then when they raise their hand for a real estate need, you're having these intelligent market expert conversations with them about it, and we're able to help them, because the message that even large franchises, you guys, are putting out right now are, we don't need to sell and buy real estate. Now, by saying that, is there still going to be people that need to list and sell their home, and people that need to buy, regardless of the circumstance?
Yes.
So if we're able to help those people safely and professionally, are we doing our fiduciary duty and using that honor wisely by saying, hey, I can help you if you need me to?
Yes.
By saying, no, we're not going to help people right now. That's not really taking that responsibility and obligation seriously, right? So we want to be sure that we're doing that, and we're wearing that badge of honor proudly. Helping your clients understand your fiduciary role is a big part of your value proposition, and I want you to remember that. So what are some ways? We talked about, pricing expectation. What are some other ways that we are serving our clients' fiduciary during real estate transactions? What's some other
Helping
fiduciary?
buyers, we work toward getting them the best house at the, I hate to say lowest price, but the lowest price for them to get into their favorite, most needed house.
Yeah,
And, that's, if they're looking at $250,000 house, but we feel like we can negotiate it down. If it's $10,000, it's still a cut in our commission, but we're trying to get the best price for them.
right. That negotiation, right? You're negotiating. And as you said, that negotiation, it does affect our commission. Yet the commission is not the priority. The fiduciary duty is the priority. Okay. And as long as you guys, we keep that as realtors at the forefront of our minds as we're doing business, we're going to be really well off. You just always want to remember that it's a duty and an honor. When we're talking about net money, whether it's a seller just selling their own personal home or an investor, that's really important to them. And investors oftentimes, that's their livelihood. So that's important that you're helping them look at those earnings and you're looking at their return on investment, and you're doing the same thing with a buyer. So when you're having that conversation with a buyer, it's not necessarily how much you're going to save right this moment. But if they purchase a home for $250,000, but the market doesn't support that when they initially buy it, they're going to overpay then, and then they're likely going to be set up for disappointment down the road when they try to sell it. And the market often doesn't increase over the years. Sometimes it does. But so if they bought it for $250,000, paid too much for it then, and then 5 years down the road try to sell it, but the market is even lower and says $225,000, that's a big gap. That's $25,000 that they're disappointed with. Are they going to call you, Rebecca, or are you going to have that conversation with them and say, I know I told you to buy it $250,000 5 years ago, but now it's $225,000. Actually, you paid too much for it then. They're in likelihood not going to refer you to anybody else, right?
Right.
So
Right.
that's what is important to remember, that fiduciary responsibility. So we're going to talk about your value proposition. We're going to look at some data around what clients want. We're going to get a big picture at our current real estate market, and we'll discuss the ways that technology can boost your value proposition. So in your guide, but let me look at it because we're just going to probably use a piece of paper. It says participant guide 4 and 6. Bear with me. I'm looking through the stuff here. Okay, so it's actually not in this, but what we're going to do is take a piece of paper and write down your thoughts about yourself and your strengths. And what are some words that come to mind when, and what I've heard, I went to coaching skills camp last year, and they said, think about it like this. If you heard 2 of your peers that you respect talking about you in a hallway, but they didn't know you were there, what are the words you wish, 3 or 4 of them, that they would use to describe you? And that should be tied to your value proposition, because that's how you want people to think about you, right? So what are those words? We're just going to take 2 minutes, and I want you to just write down 3 or 4 words that would represent a value proposition for you. All right, you got your words, your value words? Okay, now we're gonna move on and we'll come back to that, okay? All right, 2018 profile of home buyers and sellers from NAR. Okay, this is a graph that breaks it down. Here's a way to look at what buyers want most from a realtor. The graph covers the top 3 responses and categorizes everything else as other. You can go to a complete list of that from the NAR survey. They do a huge survey every year. So buyers and sellers want help finding the right home to purchase. That's a majority, that's 52%. Help the buyer negotiate the terms of sale. That's 14%. Help with price negotiations. That's 11%. And all the other things that we do is 23%. So why are we talking about this when we're talking about your value proposition? How would this information help you?
It helps us tie in, or yeah, in some way, tie these things in.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So you want to make sure that at least in your value proposition to a buyer, you're noting these things in your own words, right? So you got to keep in mind, they were all asked to choose one, the most important thing. And this was what was chosen in the 2018 survey. So most buyers need help with paperwork or learning about their neighborhood, but when forced to give one answer, they want you to help them find the right home. So I want to make sure that you say that clearly in your value proposition, okay? All right, so what skills, you've taken 2 minutes to write down 3 or 4 words to describe yourself. Now, what skills can you think of that you have or that you're developing right now to help buyers that you can use in your value proposition? Take 2 minutes and write down those skills that tie into these 3 things. All right, you got your skills, or you need another minute? Okay. All right. Now this one talks about what buyers value from the same survey. When asked the most important factor in choosing a real estate agent, these were the top answers from buyers. Okay. So reputation of agent, 31%. Agent is honest and trustworthy, 19%. Agent is friend or family member, 15%. Agent's knowledge of the neighborhood, 13%, and 22% other. What are your ahas from this table?
My aha is that the skills that I wrote down, they tie in very well with this.
That's good. That's really good. Anybody else have an aha?
Do I think? Oh,
Go ahead.
okay. Well, I was going to say, it looks like buyers value trustworthiness and your reputation even over being a family member. So even if you, or even if they are in your sphere, if you still don't have those qualities, they will still work with somebody else.
What about you, Rebecca? What were you going to say?
One of the things that we try to do is get people to give us reviews on Google, Facebook, our website. I mean, just wherever they can, and then we share them. There is a way you can share them that's not illegal. You can't post them other places, but you can say this buyer said this about me.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of people who Google agents, and then decide to make a phone call
Yeah.
to that agent, even though, like Tiffany said, even if they know somebody who's in the business, but they don't feel like they're something.
Well, even if somebody knows you as a friend or family member, they don't know you as a business person either. So,
Right.
I would Google if I had a stylist cousin, I'm gonna Google and see if she messed up somebody's hair before I use her. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't always know that side of somebody. And what's great with you guys starting out is there's so much content inside Designs and Command that you could go ahead and put some of that stuff out there and be sharing it, because when someone Googles, those things do pop up. If you don't have client testimonials now, which you will, and that's going to be part of what your practice and what you're with working with buyers and sellers, it's going to be part of what you're prompting them to do. But now you can even start building that reputation online without having a lot of business, because there's a lot of things. Just branding yourself as the market expert, as the neighborhood expert, as the caring realtor right now during COVID, that's gonna set you apart. Okay. So, all right. So if there is an attribute that you have that you now know from the data is something buyers value, is that going to be something you include in your value proposition?
Yes.
Yeah. So let's practice these attributes and putting them into a client-centered language. Okay. Hopefully this is going to give you a good idea of what verbiage to use with your value proposition. Okay, so how can we rephrase into language that explains to the buyer that the agent is honest and trustworthy? It could be, you can depend on me to help you make the best decisions, or I will work to serve your best interests. Jot down any skills or services that you offer that you didn't list before, but that now you can include based on this table. You want to make sure that what you're saying is client central. You're going to speak directly to them, right? This is more than a resume. This is you declaring your value. All right, we talked about buyers. Let's talk about sellers. So here's what sellers want most from a realtor. It's the top 5 responses, and everything else is other. You can see the complete list in the student materials, or you can look up the 2018 NAR profile of home buyers and sellers. So they want the help with marketing their home to potential buyers. That's 20%. 20 other percent wants their home priced competitively. They want help to sell their home with a specific time frame. That's 19%. They want help finding the buyer for the home. That's 14%. They want help with negotiations and dealing with buyers. That's 14%. And other is 13%. What are your ahas from what sellers want?
My aha is that they prefer you to do the market more so than the price. I always would have thought that they put the price first.
Well, I mean, it's the same, right? It's really, my aha is that, one, what did we say was the underlying cause of real estate? They want to net the most money in the shortest amount of time with the least amount of problems. So these are all really close margins because it's equally weighted with them that you market their home, that it's priced competitively, that they sell within a specific time, and that a buyer purchases. Because oftentimes, you know, and part of your value proposition, you want to make sure that you're conveying to the sellers are that you don't want to just list their home. You want to sell their home. They're not listing their home to market it. They're listing their home to net an amount of money, right? And you can't net amount of money if you just list it, right? You're just giving people a free tour to your home if you don't ever intend on selling it. So what skills do you have or are you developing that you need to write down as part of your value proposition to sellers that align with these things? You write those down. I'm gonna give you 2 minutes. I'm gonna turn my fan on. All right, do you have your items? You have your list? Okay. Let's make sure, okay, we have another one. All right, what do sellers value? Reputation of the agent at, our faces are coming up, 16%. Agent is honest and trustworthy, 19%. Agent is friend or family member, 14%. Agent's experience, 16%. Other, 35%. What are your ahas from this table?
I'm surprised that the reputation of agent is not higher.
Why do you think that is?
I really don't know.
I don't either. I just was wondering if you knew.
I mean, my only thought would be if, and it doesn't say what kind of sellers, you know, have they had their house on the market with 3 different agents?
Right.
Or, you know, because the reputation of the agent being 16% and then the agent being honest and trustworthy at 19, I would really think that either both of those would be higher than and less of the other. But I really don't know, other than they've had multiple agents trying to list a home.
Well, and it makes me wonder what's the 35% other category.
Right.
What are all the other things that selling agents do that the sellers value? Right?
Yeah, I was going
Right.
to say the same thing. With the seller, it might be a bit different because really they don't care about a lot of things that the buyers, it's just different. I mean, they
Right.
have their goals. I want you to sell this house fast, quick, least amount of problems. And so their reputation, the agent's reputation might not be, I don't know. They're just like, hey, if you can get it sold quick for the highest net, hey,
Yeah. Well,
you
and
might not be the top 20% agent, but
right. And really with a buyer versus a seller, you're walking alongside that buyer hand in hand a lot more than you are with the seller. So maybe the seller is a lot less concerned about your character and more concerned with your results. And there's so many different ways to market and sell a property. I'm thinking that's the 35%.
yeah.
Because you've got some people that have listings and do it the traditional kind of old school way with a newspaper listing, with a, open house, whatever. And then you've got the people that do the drone footage and the virtual tour walkthrough and the high VIP kind of feel of that.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe they're not so concerned with all of that as long as it has the result of selling and making them have, as much money. What's also interesting is look at the experience. Agent experience is only 16%. So they don't care if you've sold 100,000 homes before, as long as you sell their home.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so that is an advantage to you guys. What about agent is a friend or family member? What aha do you guys get from that?
They don't care. They just want to get rid of the house.
Right? Yet, 14% of them are using a friend or family member. So when we are neglecting to reach out to our sphere and our families and our friends, we may be, neglecting a good bit of business. Right? So we don't want to do that. So when we're doing our calls and we're touching people quarterly, we're not leaving out our family and friends. We're including them in those calls. And again, right now the script is, how are you? How can I help you? When they raise their hand for a real estate question, you then step in with business. But right now we're just caring on people. So we don't want to forget that section of people. So what words are you going to include in your value proposition that align with these 4 topics based on what sellers value? Think about that and write those down. All right, now we're going to talk about competition. So who are your competitors? Real estate has undergone significant changes in the past few years and the past few months. Investors have come with the intent to disrupt the industry, and they have. iBuyers are driving down commission prices, and some companies are moving toward eliminating an agent altogether. Did you guys know that?
Yes.
Yeah. Who are your competitors, and are you competing? Who are you competing with for clients and for your commission? Think about that. So one thing I'll give you guys insight to is when I study the market, I study what our competitors are doing. And our goal here at KW Montgomery is to have 25% market share by 2025. So that means we're going to be doubling annually. At the start of 2020, we had 2.5% market share. So at the end of this year, we want to get 5%. Now, what am I doing to look at am I looking at the other people ahead of us? We're about 6 or 7 in the top of the market. No one has over 5%. So what am I looking at when I'm looking at that? I'm looking at agent count, volume sold, units per agent, sales price per agent, and area that they're covering. So that helps me be strategic and Adam be strategic as we're guiding you and teaching you guys. We're seeing where there's opportunity for us to grow and excel past our competitors. And part of what's happening right now with COVID, some of these companies that had previous higher market share, they don't have a technology platform built by agents for agents. They don't have technology to lean on, websites, landing pages, consumer app. They don't have a company that is intent on training you how to pivot your existing business and build your new business during this time. So what does that mean that during this time, you guys, we collectively are leaning in and developing and sharpening our skills opposed to our competitors? What does that mean? Come on, Gerald.
It means that we keep moving. The ship keeps sailing.
That's right. It's because during this time, those that lean in are going to go forward. I heard the analogy recently on one of the shift calls that said, that's right. Marisha said it means we'll be ready to shift back when it shifts back. So the analogy is we are in place running against a resistance band. We're sharpening our skills. We're doubling down. We're doing all of the activities that lead to success. While our competitors, and I'm talking to the top in the market right now, this past 2 weeks, I've had over 150 phone calls, I'd say, checking in because I'm care calling with my sphere and my database too. That's the market, right? And what they're saying is, oh, I'm finishing up business now and I'm not taking on new clients. So what's going to happen if they sit down and chill out and we are running and we're conditioning ourselves and we're ready? When the band is released and the market and everything kind of normalizes, we're going to be taken off. They're going to have to stand up, stretch, get back into the swing of things, and that's going to create a speed for us and a slowdown for them. So why is that an advantage for you, and how can you convey that as part of your value?
I mean, like you said, we're staying sharp. We're up to date. We're up to speed with the market changes.
Right.
And
if I am your client, Shakira, and I say to you, or a customer, and I say to you, Shakira, thank you so much for calling me. We are a little, stir crazy. We're going a little stir crazy, but we were thinking of listing our home this spring and summer. Now, because COVID, I see on the news, the market is not good. And I see that I need to stay home and I don't want to risk making anybody sick, but we still need to sell. Thank you for calling me, Shakira. What would you say to me, Shakira?
I was just looking at this. I was just looking at something that Dr. Elko said, and it's the win analogy. What's important now? Is it important now that you sell your home? Let's stay in the present. Let's stay in the present. If that's important to you now, we can still do that.
Right. And how are you able to do that, Shakira? By using kind of the things that I just talked about our company is doing. You don't have to lean on your expertise. You can lean on the company and you developing right now. What are you going to say?
We're still doing virtual tours. We're still contacting our people. We're still working to serve you.
Right. And Tiffany, we talked about the shift call. Every morning I'm on a call with 60,000 realtors around the world who are working and working hard and able to serve their clients. And I am seeing and learning best practices and strategies. I am on a 1-hour training session with my office every day of the week, learning how to sharpen my skill to better serve my clients. And you would say, Katie, what is the reason that you were going to list your home? You're going to bring them back to their motivation, but you can still convey that. And that's just a knowledge of, if they speak to other realtors based on kind of what we have an insight to, is they may be calming back. So we want to be sure that we're conveying that it's a value, that we're sharpening our skills, we're developing best practices, we are taking safety precautions, that you are engaged. That labels you as a professional. It's not ever saying anything negative about a competitor. It's just knowing how much value you can bring. And like, maybe normally you wouldn't think to convey to someone that you're in training. Yet, if you're going to sell my house during this crazy time, I want to know that you are in training, that you take it seriously, that you're looking at best practices and strategies. That would be a value to me, right? So when someone says, I spoke to another realtor and they told me they've been in the business 25 years and I should sell with them. What could be something you say to that that's positive, that's not negative to the 25-year-old realtor or 25-year veteran, but that would paint a value for you if we're talking about competition? You could ask the same questions, right? Or state the fact that you are in training, that you are in groups with realtors around the world, that you do have a really, you're listening to board standards, that you're leaning into all of this to stay in tune, because things are not changing just weekly. Things are not changing daily. Things are almost changing here in the market almost hourly, as far as stay in shelter, essential, non-essential. How are you conveying that you're not worried about what that person's doing, yet you want to plant the seed that you are very much engaged in what's going on, so that you can then help serve your clients, right? And that we know the underlying issue for a seller is they want to net the most money in the least amount of time with the least amount of issues. So when they bring up the news and they bring up fear, that's a lot of issues, but we can really dial it down to say, we're taking all these safety precautions, and that handles some of that fear, right? That handles some of the upfront issue and at least the conversation, right? And then when you're talking your value proposition, you're able to convey that you're trustworthy, that you're honest, that you're, you have a good reputation, that you are able to help them and you have knowledge and expertise, that sort of thing. You want to make sure that you're conveying that as you're handling the objection. All right, so let's talk technology. That is actually the old app. That's not the new app. That's the old app picture. Now, the great thing we talked about at KW is the company is committed to adding to your value proposition through technology. In today's market, it means investing in technology that propels your business forward. We've talked about Command, we've talked about Kelly, and now let's talk about how that technology brings value to your client. So with your agent sites, it allows contacts to have saved searches for homes, and it allows agents to create searches on behalf of your contacts and clients. The IDX sites, it creates a personalized landing page for your client. It allows them to see the activity and in the neighborhoods and areas they care about. The KW app is a consumer app that uses AI, machine learning, and your expertise to provide transaction transparency and reminds the clients of your value well after they closed a home. So we have, I want to take you guys real quick into the tech-enabled agent page. if I can get out of, there we go. Uh-oh. Okay, you'll want to go to kwconnect.com/tech enabled agent. And if you are already signed into Connect or your MyKW, it'll do your profile. But this will show you tips on command, tips on KW technology, setting up and using your app. If you had some technical issues, if you want to recommend something, and then it breaks it all down. Do you guys see my screen? Y'all don't see my screen, do you? Well, dang it. All right, let me go back. There we go. Let's see. Now you see my screen. So kwconnect.com/tech-enabled-agent. It will show you this page, and if you're logged in, it'll say hi to your name. So these are all the tabs I just read through, and it's got even some more things here. Whether you want to have a guide or you want to, learn on your own, and, how you can set up your database and marketing and referrals and all of that. Here is a glimpse into the technology, and we will get to your listing and presentation and buyer consultation, setting that up. And this is something that you could do even screenshots of. You know what I'm saying? Because that looks really good and sharp. Although the ones inside Command are really sharp and up to date. So you could do that where you're showing them the value of the technology, that it can create a better experience for them. In the app, it has buyer and seller guides that you can customize, but it's got some in there you could use. So, it'll help keep on track of things. And the vision is with that app, as you're moving them through Command, through the appointment, through the listing and things, it would then send them an update to the app. So it doesn't do that part yet, but it does show them a guide, and it does show them tidbits and things. So I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint. Do y'all see my screen now? You see the PowerPoint? See the PowerPoint? Nope. Let's try again. Now, PowerPoint. Okay, perfect. All right, activity. This is where we create the value proposition. So you're going to take your words that you wrote down and the data from the graphs and create what is your value proposition. You want it to be unique, memorable, and persuasive. It's a statement that expresses your true value and why someone should work with you and how you're going to earn your commission and your high standards. So that is your homework today from Ignite, is to write out that statement. Okay? And then I want you to email it to me by tomorrow morning. We're not going to do Ignite in the morning. Or it's Good Friday, but I want you to email it to me, and because I want you to have that. And I want you to not just have some notes on your paper, but then I want you to practice conveying that to someone. Shacarol and Tiffany, you guys are script practicing. When you're doing your role play, I want you to act like you need the other person to convey that, right? So make sure that when you're talking to them, you're asking, why would I do business with you? And that makes the other person say, well, Tiffany, XYZ, and I can bring you this value. Rebecca, I had put you with Lakeisha, right, to do scripts. Right. Oh, you're muted.
For some reason, there was traffic going by.
Oh.
And we're planning on doing script practice every afternoon.
Okay, perfect. So make sure that
So-
you're now including your value proposition as you're saying that. And I actually have an appointment with her, I think, set up for 10:30 today. So
Okay.
I'll tell her a little bit about the value proposition as well. Gerald, Marisha, have you done, chat me and see if you've done script play or role play with Vicky yet. Are you still with us? Let's see, chat. Not with Vicky, but I have. All right, so Marisha, you get a new partner in Gerald. Y'all email each other, text each other, Facebook each other, however you're going to get each other's information, and do a quick 15-minute Gerald. What we've been doing is a script practice, and our script right now is not, we have a script book, and that's great, but what we're conveying right now to our sphere of influence and to our database is, hey, how are you, and how can I help you during this time? So they go, blah, 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 blah. I'm going stir crazy. It's kind of crazy. What do you think? Blah, blah. And when they prompt with real estate, you need to be ready with this value proposition that you're going to send to me today. So you and Marisha call each other. It could be 15 minutes. It doesn't have to be a long, drawn out thing. It's just really to break the ice and to get yourself familiar with using this language that you're not typically using, right? So you guys do that. All right. So we're going to distinguish ourselves with that. So it's going to be how we deliver it, how we apply it. What kind of knowledge are you expected to have as a realtor?
Knowledge about the market.
Right. What kind of knowledge sets you apart from your competition?
Use of technology can.
Yeah. Use of training and being learning based, right? As we had those discussions. Your fiduciary role includes being a hyper local expert for your clients. You should be able to tell them everything they could reasonably want to know about an area they're about to invest in. This could include zoning, future development plans, ecological changes, septic systems. Know your area and know what's relevant to that. For instance, if you're down in the Cloverdale area, the prairie soil and things like that can come up. So it's your due diligence to know about the area you sell to, right? If you're selling land, you need to know about surveys and acreage and fence lines. And if you're selling commercial, you need to know about commercial contracts and leases and all of those things that you're going to need to know about when you're doing commercial, the zonings, whether you're in a residential area or a commercial area. All of that is very important to be aware of and to know. And that's what we're conveying, our expertise. General market knowledge, we talked about what kind of market we're moving in, what direction it's moving in, interest rates. That's why I'm making sure that we're having direct contact with our closing attorneys, with our local lenders, and they're discussing things that they're seeing. What's going on with the stimulus package? Our whole business meeting Tuesday was about that. Just making sure that you're up to date and informed so you can have informed conversations and paint yourself as that local expert. So it continues to drive knowledge and an improvement is part of the 6 personal perspectives. So are you guys aware of the 6 personal perspectives? All right. It's the 6 personal perspectives. It's inside of Keller Williams, and it covers being learning based, moving from entrepreneurial to purposeful, self mastery. Off the top of my head, I can't think of the other 3, but it's knowing that you're learning base and that you have self-mastery. And that's what we're doing in Ignite with these habits. That's mastering ourselves. So Gary Keller wrote the 6 personal perspectives as best practice for top agents. We want to grow and keep up the expertise and keep up the knowledge, okay? And know what neighborhood you're specializing in. All right, we're going to create a stellar experience. We talked about the 3 aspects of service. You know the purpose of real estate, you know your value proposition, and you know your fiduciary role. All contribute to the same goal, ensuring the best experience for your client. Now that you understand that, it's on you to deliver the best experience. So we want to think about this. As we're thinking about our value proposition, what qualifies you as an excellent real estate expert? Excellent real estate experience. What qualifies you to deliver an excellent real estate experience? What services do you or your office provide? What is an allied resource that you can leverage to improve your client experience? For example, staging, landscaping, cleaning, carpet cleaning, home inspectors, movers. The list goes on and on and on and on and on. You want to have your list of people that you can lean on. You're not the guy, you want to know the guy. You're not the landscaper, you want to know some landscapers. You are definitely not the plumber or the painter or the HVAC professional, but it's on you to make sure you are aware of some reputable that you can recommend. Okay? Make sure that you identify the qualifications, the services, and the resources that you can provide. And if you're just starting out, again, leverage. You have a team behind you. You have an office behind you. You have the #1 franchise in the world behind you, supporting you. Be sure that you're able to convey that to people. All right, we're going to do our recap and ahas. So what are you thinking, feeling, and what actions are you going to take?
Katie, for the value proposition, does it have to be like short and to the point, or just make sure you get the delivery?
If you have a longer, which as you're creating it, it probably will be longer because you're dreaming it up, you're structuring what your message is. And that'll be part of, if you want to say, your bio or your resume, but make sure that you can convey it in an elevator speech,
Gotcha.
right?
Okay.
So if you have several paragraphs, that's perfect. That's great because that's a lot about you. Yet if I said to you, Tiffany, why should I do business with you? You need to be able to tell me in 2 minutes or less.
Gotcha.
So have a bio, have the information, the value, longer version, if you will, but be able to say it in a nutshell. And that's what I want from you guys is your elevator speech, your VP elevator speech. Send that to me. That's the email I want, right? Your bio is great because it goes on your website. It goes on all maybe your Facebook, whatever you're using to market yourself. Yeah, if somebody asked you on the spot, why should I do business with you? You need to be able to convey that in a way that covers the basis of what we talked about. All right, I need some ahas. I need some action plans.
I've got to get in touch with more of my clients. I've checked in on several of them, but not all of them.
My action plan is to write my value proposition. We'll figure it out first, then write it.
Yeah.
And also keep in touch and find new prospects or lead generate as well while doing both.
Right.
Lead generate.
That's exactly right. And we sharpen our skill through doing, right? There's a section in the MREA where it's talking about quality versus quantity. And I'm probably going to mess the exact story up, but the idea of it is there was a potter who had a class of students and said, I want you to make as many pots as you can, as perfectly as you can. And I'm going to grade you at the end of the semester. And so he divided the class up into 2 groups. So one group, all they focused on was making perfect clay pots, right? So they would perfect one, set it over the edge. And then you had the other group that their whole focus was making just as many as they can. So when you got to the end of the results, who had more pots and saw an improvement over time? The second group, right? Because the first group was so worried about being perfect that they only made a few.
Okay.
It's you're cranking out so many that you're getting better and better and better. It's these conversations. The first ones, the beautiful thing about the role play partner and script practice is you get the awkwardness, a little bit of that out. Kind of like when you wake up in the morning, the first thing, you don't want to have a meaningful conversation because you got to wake up, you got to kind of say a couple words and get out that kind of, you want to get all that out of the way so that you can have a more natural conversation with somebody. And the more and more you guys are going to do it, and the more and more you're incorporating these habits that we're developing in Ignite, the sharper your skills are going to get. Okay. All right. So we have had a good session today. I really enjoyed it. Now let's talk about our success habits. We're doubling up. So we have 20 contacts added every day. Who's been adding contacts, 20 contacts every day?
Not every day is 20, but it's the goal I try to reach. So if it's like 16 or if it's 12, or I try to make up for it if I'm short.
Yeah, right. So if we don't do 20 today, we're doing 40 tomorrow, right? We just want to make sure that that habit is created. And I'm going to tell you, I've taught Ignite several times, and the premise of the 10-4 has kind of been the same the whole time. I haven't really held people accountable to this, and that's my bad. But guys, I'm holding you accountable because at the end of this, I want you to have a database that is touched and loved on. And it's more important now than ever because your livelihood and your future financial gain is tied to it. This is your bank you're depositing in every day. And we've already talked about how the top competitors in our area are not actively doing this. They have said verbally, we're not doing this. So if you guys are doing it, just starting out, and and then the top producers stop doing it, what's going to happen? Your opportunity to develop a really strong business and gain mind share right now and market share later, or even market share right now, is never been a greater opportunity for you. So the 20 conversations a day, the 20 handwritten notes. Now we said that can be modified. We don't want to put anybody in danger by sending a handwritten note and contamination, whatever, or going to the store to buy them. So make it a thoughtful email, make it a thoughtful message, make it a thoughtful text, something to say, thank you for talking to me today. I really appreciate you. Okay. And then you're previewing 20 homes a week, making sure that you know the market. Guys, when we're looking at the market every day, look at the new listings. Look at the agent remarks. That's how you're going to adapt and see what other people are doing. So when you're having these conversations, and I said to you, Shakira, well, I heard you can't sell a house right now. Well, actually, we're putting into the agent remarks. We're requesting this. We're doing this. So you're speaking on what you're seeing in the market, and that paints you as a professional. So be sure that you're previewing the homes and looking through those. All right, scripts are important, helps us with lead generation. It uncovers motives. It helps you identify objections, helps you close deals, and it speaks in terms the customer understands and builds confidence. Your value proposition is the script that you write. I want you to remember that. All right, that's all I have today. We will not do Ignite in the morning. 1 second, I have a chat. Let me pull it up. Oh, yes, Marisha, I'll stay on 1 second after the call so we can chat. All right, so we will next week, I sent out the shift workshop. No Ignite for the first part of next week. We're going to just do the shift workshop. It's the 13th, 14th, 15th, and 16th from 8:30 to 10. James Shaw will be talking specifically to our group. Okay. Going through the shift tactics and kind of, I'm assuming he's going to incorporate what he's learning from his group and seeing all over and giving us strategies to use directly. That is free. Go ahead and register. When you register, it will send you the Zoom link. I don't think it's mandatory to go every session, yet if you can, do it, right? Because I've had some people go, well, do I have to go to all 4? I've got something going on. I don't think that's necessary. You just register for free. Our market center has already purchased our access to it. So take advantage of that. It's open to all brokerages, so share it with other people as well. The link is in the email. Rebecca, I will make sure, I think I sent it to Katie and Sarah, but I'll make sure that you get it as well. And that will be extremely valuable. We will pick up at night next Friday at 9 a.m. Our session is Find and Win the Buyer. Following, let me stop recording because this it's not really relevant for everybody for the rest of the life.